Good day, and welcome to Conversations with AARP Virgin Islands. I'm Troy Deshabere Schuster, State Director of AARP in this territory. And once again, it's a great pleasure to be with you, bringing you important information affecting the 50 plus population in this territory. Today, we are joined by the Assistant Director of Family Caregiver Support Program at the VI Department of Human Services, Ms. Sandra Broadley. Sandra, good day. How are you?
Hello, Troy. I'm fine, thanks.
Great. And before we get started, I wish you and your family, Sandra, and all of the listening audience a very happy and safe Thanksgiving as we approach that this Thursday.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we remind all people in the Virgin Islands and everybody listening to us, wherever you may be in the world, to have a very safe Thanksgiving. I know this is a time when families like to come together and celebrate, especially here in the Caribbean. Even though it's not really a Caribbean holiday, it's still a time when we give thanks to God for so many blessings and come together and celebrate that. But please remember social distancing. Remember to use your masks. You can even have virtual Thanksgiving parties so that everybody remains safe and free from COVID-19. So please do remember to exercise all precautions. And especially, we encourage our older population because those are the individuals who are most vulnerable. We're wishing you all the best. So, Sandra, tell us about your role with the Family Caregiver Support Program. What do you
Sure.
do?
So, as the assistant director, I work along with our director, Arlene Evans O'Reilly, and we help to coordinate support groups, caregiver activities, and trainings for the caregivers who are enrolled in our program. Actually, we are in the planning phases of our annual social seminar training, and that's where we have a nice dinner and we have a guest speaker who brings relevant and pertinent topics to our caregivers that help them in their caregiving role. So we are planning that for the early week, the early first part of December.
Excellent. And this whole notion of caregiver is so very, very, very important as so many people in the community continue to age, live longer than people did 20, 30, 40 years ago. And there's a real great need throughout the world, not only the United States, but throughout the world for family caregivers. And so it's wonderful to be able to support them. And so tell us a little more about what the Family Caregiver Support Program offers. You mentioned a couple of things just now, but I'm sure that the program does a whole lot more over the course of the year. So please share with us some more detail.
Sure, Troy. First, I want to make sure it's clear who we call the caregiver. So the caregiver is the person who is usually the family member who is providing services for their loved one. So we're talking about unpaid services. So we provide help, assistance to persons who are enrolled in our program. We make referrals, whether it's to Meals on Wheels, homemakers, legal services. We provide supplemental services that helps them with the care of their loved one. They can purchase hygienic supplies and we assist with that. We also offer what we call respite care. If the person needs to take a break, they have to go away, or they're just feeling particularly overwhelmed and they need what we call respite, then we can assist with having someone come in the home and help out. Or if that person needs to be placed on a short-term basis in a long-term care facility, we can also help with those services. We provide trainings. That's part of our mandate to provide trainings for our caregivers, individual counseling, and of course, we have support groups that are taking place on Tuesdays every month. Currently, we are doing those via conference call, and it provides our caregivers an opportunity to share, to feel supported, to know that they're not alone, and that the feelings that they have about the roles are quite normal feelings. I think what's not so well known about our program is that we also have a grandparents raising grandchildren component, as well as a grief and loss group for persons who have lost their loved ones.
It's interesting that you mentioned feelings a moment ago as you were talking about the many services, a very comprehensive array of services that you offer through your program within the Department of Human Services. But I want to dwell on feelings for a moment because I am a caregiver myself. My mother is now 87 years old and needing a lot more help. And I am blessed that I have my siblings to share that role with me. But it's a lot of emotion when you see your loved one getting older. You see them slowing down. You see them needing more help, and you remember when that person was the strong person in your life. When we were children, we could run to mommy and daddy, and they would lift us up, make everything feel better. If we scraped our knee, they would comfort us and dress our knee and make it feel better. And as they would say, give it a kiss, give that little scrape a kiss, and it just felt better all of a sudden. And now, as they're getting older, then we have to be the ones, right, to pick them up when they fall, to dress their wounds, to give them the hugs and kisses. And it's such a reversal of roles that it leaves it leaves the caregiver on one hand feeling somewhat gratified that they're able to provide that for their loved one, but yet a certain sadness when you see your loved one declining, and even a certain fear. I mean, even I'm here 50 years old, and sometimes I say to myself, wow, I wish my mother could just give me a hug and tell me everything is going to be okay when I face the challenges of my life. But then how do I run and ask her for that all the time when I need to comfort her too, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
it's an interesting thing. And then for some caregivers, it's also a financial burden, when they have to provide financial resources for their loved one. And that causes a certain degree of anxiety, even though they do it with love.
yes.
So there is a lot of feeling, a lot of emotions that goes into being a caregiver. And it is so difficult sometimes for us to deal with that. And so I'm sure you experience that very often when you talk to and help and support family caregivers. Can you tell us maybe what are some of the emotions that you are hearing or feeling from caregivers as you work with them?
Yes, many of the caregivers, they are definitely overwhelmed. And they have feelings of guilt sometimes because sometimes the person who you're caring for maybe acting out in certain behaviors that make it difficult. And so they may get angry, and then they feel guilty that they've gotten angry, or they have feelings of maybe resentment to other persons who are not helping. Sometimes family members may say, well, she's being willful. My mother's being willful. And all of those feelings are normal. And when the person comes to our support group, we make sure that they understand that everything that they're feeling is normal. You don't have to feel bad that you feel guilty. You don't have to feel bad that you're feeling angry at the person you're taking care of. Those feelings are normal. And the facilitators just help the caregivers to work through those feelings and to be able to provide care in the best way that they can, given their abilities and their resources.
Yes, it's an interesting challenge. At AARP, we started caring for the caregivers support group. This is our third year now of doing that, going our third year. The first year that we did it, we had a retired registered nurse from the US mainland who had written a book, authored a book called Caring for the Caregivers. And it was published by the American Nurses Association of the United States. And she did just a wonderful job. We did these workshops on St. Croix and St. Thomas, and there was an overwhelming response. And we found that there was, again, just a lot of emotion coming forth. So when we did it this year, early this year, what we did is we contracted with a group of clinical psychologists to do sort of a group therapy. And if anybody needed a one-on-one, one of the psychologists could take them to another room and be with them privately and chat for a while and rejoin the group. And that was also really, really excellent. And we look forward to doing that again next year. And we look forward to finding ways to partner with the Department of Human Services and your program as well. At AARP, we always say that AARP loves caregivers, uh,
Yes, yes.
as we advocate for the 50 plus population. So thank you so much for all the services that you perform, that you provide with your program within the Department of Human Services. It is so very needed. Today, an estimated 48 million family caregivers care for their loved ones who are 18 and older. This number is at high risk of shrinking as the baby boomers will be in the high risk years of later life and will require care. So, now what will happen when the boomers need help from family caregivers later on? How do you see this rolling out?
Wow. That has the potential to overwhelm all of our services. And that's a conversation that I believe all our policymakers need to be having at this time, because there is such a great need for support for caregivers. There's so many caregivers and persons who need help that we have to put things in place now so that we can prevent our system becoming overwhelmed. So we have to discuss with our federal partners, administration on aging, about creative ways that we can expand our services and reach out to more persons who need help. That would be very, very important for us to do.
Very important, and I think of myself. Here I am as a caregiver to my mother. I'm already 50 years of age. I don't have any children. Who's going to take care of me when I need help?
Yes.
So I'm relying on karma. That word karma, that's a universal principle, that's found in every religion and every philosophy on the planet.
Yes.
So,
When you do good, it will come back to you.
that's right. So
Yeah.
I'm relying on that so that I will have somebody to help me when I need help in my
Yeah.
later years.
That works too.
Yes, it does. It works in a variety of ways. Karma is always at work.
Yes.
The issue of long-term care, support, and services continues to plague this Asian community. How can potential family caregivers prepare for the task of caring for their loved ones? So, talking about people who are not caregivers yet, but who will be soon enough. How can they prepare? Any tips? Any advice?
Sure. When persons realize that maybe their parent or someone in their family is becoming more dependent, it's important to have a conversation. You can have a family meeting, the other members of the family, and talk about what needs to be done, who can do what according to their resources. And that's very important, that you give persons roles, or persons choose roles that goes along with their resources and their abilities. That makes things run more smoothly. So you have that conversation, and you don't exclude the loved one. That person has to be part of that conversation as well, about what they want, what would their care look like, and how they want things to be done. It's important to know what resources there are in the community, so you can know where the gaps are and what else you need to do. So persons need to do an assessment of what their resources are, whether it's the other family members, whether it's church members, whether it's neighbors who can help out with the care of their loved one. They have to understand what's involved. Like you mentioned, Troy, it's a big financial investment. It's an emotional investment as well, and they have to understand that is what that they're going into. So it's also important to have legal matters straightened out, talk about whose name is on what, power of attorney, guardianship, those types of matters need to be dealt with as well. And then we can always, even as individuals, advocate and talk to our lawmakers about things that need to be put in place that can help the caregivers as this increases.
Wow, Sandra, you said a lot there. Very important things. Very, very important things. First of all, starting with the family conversation.
Yes.
You know, thankfully, again, in my family, all of my siblings, we all participate. The four of us together, we all help our mother. But all too often, actually more often than not, it's only one person in the family being the caregiver.
Right, right.
And the family rarely gets together to discuss that. And the person who's the caregiver is often fearful of bringing it up to their siblings, for fear of anger or rejection or, all kinds of negativity that may come out. So it's really important for families to stick together and to discuss these things and to see how the care can be divided up among them. And One super important thing you just said is talking to the person in need of care.
Yes.
What do they want their care to look like? Oftentimes we don't even listen to the person in need of care. We just do what we think we should do, and that's it.
Yes.
And I have to keep reminding myself that many times I have to remind myself to sit with my mother and say, how are you feeling?
Yes.
What do you need? Am I providing for your needs? What else can I do for you?
Mhm.
And to make that person being cared for comfortable to express that, because oftentimes people, well, not oftentimes, but usually people don't like to be a bother to other people. And especially as they get older, older people are very conscious of that. They don't want to be a burden on their offspring. But when you open the door to that conversation, when you start up that conversation, then they may express themselves and be willing to share. And then, you can step in and fill those needs. Another very important thing you talked about is all those end of life plans about guardianship, about power of attorney, about inheritance, passing on property, whether through a trust or some other instrument that's available. Very, 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 very important. Oftentimes older people are afraid to talk about things like that because now they're talking about the end of their life, right? And who likes to talk about the end of their life? But it's important to have those conversations and to plan so that that transition is easy. And so, talking about advocacy, AARP, we are the advocacy agency for the 50 plus population, and we have done a lot in these realms. We have done a lot to revise the guardianship code of the Virgin Islands. We've had many bills passed, and we're working on a huge bill for next year out of the Uniform Law Commission of the United States. Is over 300 pages in this bill, and it's sort of like the crowning glory of the guardianship code of every state in the federation, including the territories. And so we hope to get that passed here next year. And so we'll be hearing a lot more about that. We've done a lot also to revise the probate code of the Virgin Islands through legislation, and so much more. There's a lot. We could go on for a whole hour talking about the advocacy that AARP has done. But I encourage you, Sandra, as you talk to family caregivers and you're hearing, you're the boots on the ground, as it were, dealing with caregivers, right? As you hear their needs, please do share it with us at AARP because we can advocate, to have those needs filled. And we know that there are many gaps and we're working on it, but we want to hear from the community. So please encourage your people to talk to you, and then you pass it on to us. So let's make a deal on that.
Yes, we'll have that collaboration for sure.
Excellent. I look forward to that. On average, family caregivers give 20 hours of care per week, often 7 days a week. The emotional and physical demands involved in caregiving can strain the most resilient person. What advice can you give to caregivers to manage the stressors associated with caring for a loved one? What practical tips and advice can you give as they go through this day by day, hour by hour?
Take care of yourself. We tell that to our caregivers all the time. Take care of yourself. Don't give up on certain habits or practices or activities that you used to enjoy. You can still go to the beach, go out and exercise, go and have a date night, a spa day, still do things that you enjoy, even though you have to spend a lot of time with the person you care for. Still make time for yourself. And we encourage them to do this because when they take care of themselves, naturally, it makes them better able to take care of the person that they love, that they're taking care of. And it's self-care. Taking care of yourself makes a big difference in your caregiving role. And it's so important. So we always encourage them to do that so that they can remember that they're important too. They have rights, they have needs as caregivers, and that they need to take some time and fulfill those needs at times.
Wonderful advice. In our culture, we always say, the old people say, and then they have some little saying, the old people say. Well, one of the things that the old people say is charity begins at home.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And yeah, if you don't love yourself and care for yourself first, not in a selfish way, not
Yes,
in a selfish way, but
right.
if you don't love and care for yourself first, how can you give that to anybody else?
We always give them the example of when you're on the plane and you're putting on the oxygen mask, you put on yours first, and then you can assist somebody else. So that's the analogy that we use. Yeah,
That's a very good analogy.
yes, yes,
Yeah, and I hear that often because I have to fly often for work, and yeah, it's so true because if you don't have the oxygen, then you can't do anything for anybody else.
right.
So yeah, charity begins at home. And so, what effects is the COVID-19 pandemic having on the on caregivers here in the Virgin Islands, and how is your program assisting in managing their well-being?
Mm. For sure, this has added an extra level of stress to our caregivers. And for one thing, the persons who they have coming into their homes, who we call adult sitters, they have concerns about that whole situation because many times the adult sitter has other persons, other homes that they are going into in addition to that person's home. And some of them have asked, should I ask them to get a COVID test? They have concerns about that. Should they get a test before they come to my home? How do I know that they're safe? So we kind of work them through those conversations. They're also, of course, uncomfortable, so to speak, about going out into the community because when they come back, they have to have a very close contact with their loved one. So they think about the risks, the potential risks when they go out and come back home. Also managing doctor visits, doing a telehealth, a virtual doctor visit, or going into the office. So again, those are the conversations that we have with them, and we share resources and help them to feel comfortable. So there's always us liaising and talking and making sure that they understand what's involved and what they need to do. So it
Yeah.
has been very stressful. We also do our wellness calls, make sure that they're doing okay. We talk with them. We have given out some emergency care kits. That way we were able to see them and, have a little face-to-face time. And we still keep promoting our individual counseling sessions. If they're feeling particularly overwhelmed, we can always schedule an individual counseling session for them with our facilitators.
Yes, I can certainly relate with all of that. Thankfully, AARP has actually mandated that all of the employees work from home, from our CEO all the way down through the organization. And so here I am at home. I'm here in my home office, so I'm able to stay here all day long. I only go out when I need to go to the grocery store, to the gas station, to do my basic shopping, and I'm back home. So I know that I can keep myself safe for my mother. But for those people who have to go out and work in an office or work somewhere every day, it must weigh heavily on them.
Yes,
It
yes,
would be a terrible, terrible sense of guilt if they brought the virus home to their loved one, huh? That would be just really devastating. And
absolutely. Yes.
yeah, and we've seen examples where right here in the Virgin Islands, we had a mother, father, and son die
Yes.
as a result of
Sad,
COVID.
sad, sad.
Very sad, very tragic. My heart always goes out to that family. I think of them very often. And and then even I think it was in New York, there was an even larger family that all of them perished
Yes,
as a result of COVID, you know?
yes. Mhm.
Oh,
Yes,
these are such difficult times we live in, and it
yes,
causes great anxiety, and especially for caregivers wanting to do their best for their loved one and not bring
yes,
any disease home to them.
exactly.
So,
Mhm.
AARP, as I mentioned, has a history of advocating for laws that support family caregivers. This type of work has led to changes to the Virgin Islands Code on issues of work flexibility. So, uh, so that that caregivers will have that flexibility to provide care. And so, through the passage of the Family Care Act, caregivers continue to receive support from hospital to home and allow their loved ones to remain at home as they age. How has all of this type of advocacy supported the needs of family caregivers throughout the territory? Have you seen any benefits of that yet with the flexible work hours? And again, as I said before, does anything pop up right now in your mind as to what we can do as advocates here, AARP, to support family caregivers?
Okay, so advocacy and legislation are very important as we provide services for our seniors. So I'm sorry, can you tell me the question again?
Yeah. So sorry. I know it was a big
I just
statement
had a
and
senior moment, I'm sorry.
not a problem. And that was a two-part question, and I thought to myself, I should not do
I
that.
got it. Okay, the CARES Act, CARES Act.
So the CARES Act and the flexible work hours.
That I like is that it recognizes that the caregiver is an integral part of the medical team, so to speak. They are doctors, they are nurses, they are discharge planners, and the caregiver. So when the person is discharged from the hospital, the care continues. There is a continuity of care. The discharge planners and the hospital staff explains to the caregiver what needs to be done. Because with all that the caregivers have to do, they may have to give medication, dress wounds, help to transfer from a wheelchair to a bed. And it may be even something like a wheelchair. If you don't know how to operate a wheelchair, you have to learn things like that, how to engage brakes, the footrest, and all of those things that need to be explained. So when that information is passed on to the caregiver, then it helps us to be a smooth transition when the person gets home. So there's no risk of readmission to the hospital because the caregiver is left hanging, not knowing what to do. You talked about the work flex hours. We have some of our support groups that take place in the day. So caregivers can use their lunch hour and come and have their support group time. So that has worked out very well for them. So we appreciate all of the advocacy and the legislation that AARP is doing on behalf of our seniors. It really goes a long way in preventing caregiver stress and caregiver burnout and all of those things that go along with caregiving.
Wonderful, wonderful. At AARP, we've advocated for that CARES Act all over the United States, and it's now law in most of the states across the country. And we're happy that it's law here now.
Yes.
And again, just big kudos to AARP, because not only do they give us vacation time and sick time, but they also give us paid caregiver leave.
Yes.
At AARP. So we have a whole bank of hours just for that, and it's such a help. And so through that CARES Act here in the Virgin Islands, we found a way for personnel, the Division of Personnel, for government employees to give a certain amount of paid leave time for caregiving. And you just mentioned that. So we're very happy that that's now law here in this territory.
Yes.
And so as we're coming down now just to the last 30 seconds of our show, can you tell us how the public can learn more about the services and support systems of the Family Caregiver Program?
Yes, the Department of Human Services VI Family Caregiver Support Program is located in Nude Hansen Complex at Hospital Ground, and our phone number is 774-0930, extension 4484, and the website is dhs.gov.vi.
Excellent. Well, Sandra, thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to having you in a future show and learning more about the Family Caregiver Support Program. Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much. Same to you.
Thank you.